De'Vonna Pittman is a community organizer. She joins us from New Hope, Minnesota. Ma'am, it's good to see you. Mayor Jacob Frey there urging Minnesotans to stay at home. Will you be staying at home tonight?
I will be.
What do you
I will be.
expect will happen this evening as the sun goes down in Minnesota?
You know, I want to be hopeful. I want peace in our state, but I just don't know what's going to happen. Every night it's gone to another level, and we could never have expected to happen what has happened in our state.
Well, Mayor Frey seems to believe that there are foreign actors at play here who might have been coming from across state lines to instigate violence with police officers. What is your view on this accusation?
I absolutely do believe that the people who are tearing up our city and who are instigating and agitating the the littering, the protests are definitely not from our state.
Ms. Pittman, there is a view that violent protests, I don't want to say unnecessary, but some people believe that the violence that happens gain more media attention and hence brings more attention to the actual issue. What is your view on this comment?
I think the violence definitely does bring more attention across the country, and it makes us more visible to other states. However, I believe that the violence is happening because of deeper roots, but I don't think that it's going to bring us what we are trying to get at. George Floyd's death was absolutely a horrible, horrible thing. But the communities that are being destroyed are the same communities that George Floyd loved and would not want to see destroyed.
I'm really glad you brought up George's name there because as a media organization, we focus on what's happening in the now. And of course, now we see unrest happening. Can you tell us a bit about George Floyd as a person, if you can? And exactly, can you describe what was lost in his death?
You know, I didn't know George Floyd. I think we've all had the displeasure and the pleasure of getting to know him as a result of his death. But the things that I've heard about him as a father and someone who people loved in all the places that he worked, the people, his family, people who have had nothing but great things to say about him, I believe that he was a good man. And what is being lost in his death is who he was. And in that unrest, I do believe that we can be spending more time focusing on George Floyd, who he was, the kind of life he lived, and the kind of men he would want the protesters, the kind of person he would want the looters to be. So I do think that is being lost.
Ms. Pittman, if I can ask you, this obviously instances of police brutality against persons of color in the United States has been happening as far as we can remember. As an African American woman in the US in the year 2020, do you feel safe for yourself and for your family?
You know, as a female Black woman, I think that we have not been warned as much as our males. I have three brothers, and I know that my mom has always taught them how they should act when they're pulled over by police officers, how they should respond to an arrest if they should ever be arrested. My husband also, I know that he is a good man. You know, he gets up every morning and goes to work and takes care of his family. But he shared that he has anxiety when he gets pulled over by an officer. Has never gotten a ticket in his life. Has never got a felony or been a part of any crimes or anything like that. But the anxiety is absolutely real. And after Jamil Clark's and Philando Castile's murder by a police officer, there has just been another level of fear by all African Americans. And so I'm not in denial by the constant anxiety and fear of, police, because this doesn't mean that every cop is a bad cop, because we know there are good cops out there. But when you get pulled over by a police officer, you just never know which one will pull you over.
Yeah, this constant anxiety you speak of is fascinating. I've never been to the United States, but I hear about it all the time. This constant fear that persons of African descent live in the United States. It's hard to describe to persons who aren't of color. And of course, the images of George under the knee of this officer rings through so many people's minds on a daily basis since it happened on Monday. And of course, one officer has been arrested. But do you think, as a Minnesotan, that anything will come out of this? What exactly do Minnesotans want? What will stop the protests?
Minnesotans were first calling for the main officer to be charged, and he was charged. Most Minnesotans are not happy that he was only charged with third-degree murder. And now the protesters and leaders are calling for the arrest of the other three individuals. I think in order for the protests to stop, that needs to happen. Those three officers need to be brought to justice. The protesters will not stop until that happens.
And of course, you mentioned you were obviously, as many people are, an advocate of peaceful protests. Do you think that had there not been violence throughout these last days, that peacefully protesting will bring about the change that you need to see in the United States?
I think that right now we're not just having peaceful protest. There's an uprising. And when we get to this point of uprising, it means that for so long we've had issues and situations that have been unchecked. Minnesota has some of the worst disparities in the country. We've had people who have mental health issues and are living in poverty and don't have the bare necessities to get by. And so what we're seeing right now is a result of all of those things being unchecked for many, 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 many years. And so even with peaceful protest, which is one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen in my life, even with peaceful protest, I'm not sure that we will get the response that we need, or that we will begin to change laws that are in place. The uprising, I think, definitely, whether wanted or not, it is definitely going to make a difference when we sit down at the table, when the smoke quells, to have a discussion about what we need to do, because we never want to see this happen again in Minnesota
Ms.
or
De'Vonna,
anywhere for that matter.
Ms. De'Vonna Pittman, we appreciate you coming on TRT World to speak with us. And of course, we hope that you and your family, including your three brothers, remain safe during this time. And of course, moving forward. Thanks again.